how did Imam Mahdi come to leadership? How did Imam Mahdi become the Imam of his time? We know it, of course, it happens when the previous Imam passes away. But with the passing of Imam Hassan al-Askari came a lot more than just passing on the crown of Imamat to Imam Mahdi. How that took place, and how it shaped for Imam Mahdi, and what his leadership means in this day and age is the topic that I would like to welcome our next speaker to discuss. So please, with a loud salawat, please welcome to the podium Dr. Zahra Hashemi-Pour. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
All right. So I will be discussing the Imamat of Imam Mahdi today, and we're going to start with his father's death, actually. So at the time of his father's death, Imam Hassan Askari, who was Imam Mahdi alayhi salam's father, not everyone was necessarily aware of Imam Mahdi. Imam Hassan's companions knew who he was, but he was not publicly known, and this was done to protect him from his enemies. So at the time of his death, Imam Zaman's uncle, Ja'far al-Kazab, initially claimed to be the next Imam in succession. And he was about to actually lead the funeral prayers for Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. But at that moment, Imam Mahdi, who was only about 5 years old at the time, stepped forward and grabbed Imam Ja'far al-Kazab's robe and proclaimed, "Uncle, you move behind. I will lead the funeral prayers of my father." And this is a key point to note because only another Imam can actually lead the funeral prayer of another Imam. So basically, this was Imam Mahdi's way of proclaiming to those present that he, in fact, was the rightful successor. And the people who had been close to Imam Hassan Askari recognized Imam Mahdi and were able to confirm the validity of his statement. So that was his initial way of presenting it to the people who were there at the time. Now, some may say, well, a 5-year-old becoming an Imam, is he really right for it? He's so young. But youth shouldn't be seen as an obstacle for this position because we have previous examples in history where people at a young age were either given prophethood or imamat. Specifically within the Quran, Surah Maryam has 2 examples. The first example being Prophet Yahya, who in the Surah Maryam it says, "O Yahya, take hold of the book with might, and we gave him prophethood, even as a youth." Now, when this ayah was revealed, it's in the context of Prophet Yahya only being 3 years old, which is even younger than Imam Zaman was. In addition to that one, we have an even younger age where Prophet Isa, peace be upon him, was speaking when he was still in the cradle. And in that situation, Hazrat Maryam, his mother, presents him to her community when he is initially born. And they start accusing her of indecency and very wrong accusations. But instead of actually replying to everyone herself, she just points to her child, the newborn baby, and he replies, "I am indeed a servant of Allah. He has given me the book and made me a prophet." So we have an example of a 3-year-old and an infant basically proclaiming their rights as religious leaders. Now, besides those 2 examples that are mentioned in the Quran, Imam Muhammad Taqi alayhi salam and Imam Ali Naqi alayhi salam both became imams before the age of 10. So there was previous precedent for someone of a young age to take on such a role. So as you can see, age is not an absolute requirement to becoming an imam. Now, that situation that happened at Imam Hassan's funeral made Imam Mahdi's presence known to a lot of people, and unfortunately, Ja'far al-Kazab didn't like the outcome of that situation and ended up going to complain to the king so that Imam Zaman would be arrested. Well, this put Imam Zaman's life in danger, so it created the need for his disappearance to be able to elude the capture of the king's men. Under the command of Allah, Imam Mahdi disappeared to protect his position and protect himself. Now, some may say a hidden Imam cannot do his job properly if he's hidden, but there are historical examples where people have interacted with Imam Zaman and he has been able to help people in need. So one example goes back to when he was still a child and his father was alive. So Imam Hassan Askari was presented by some of his followers with bags of gold and silver coins that had been sent by other people. At the time, it was narrated that Imam Mahdi was a young child actually sitting in his father's lap. Without asking for any details, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam immediately knew which of the coins had been lawfully obtained and which were not lawfully obtained. And his father, Imam Hassan Askari, confirmed his judgment. So this kind of sets a precedent that even as a young boy, he was someone whose judgment could be trusted. Besides that example, we have an example of medical healing, where a man by the name of Ismail ibn Hassan had an incurable tumor on his left thigh. He had been told that he had no hope, basically, from the doctors of the time, so he went to visit the graves of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam as well as Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. And he asked for help from Allah and Imam Mahdi to help him with this incurable tumor. Later after that visit, he went to the Tigris River, where he saw a young man along with 3 other riders coming from the direction of Samra. The young man asked him, "Will you go tomorrow to your family?" In which Ismail responded, "Yes." Then the young man said, "Come nearer so that I can learn about your problem." Ismail did as he was asked, and the young man pressed on Ismail's thigh and then got back on the horse that he arrived with. One of the companions of this young rider proclaimed to Ismail, "You have been cured. He is your imam." So you see in some instances when you ask for help, you might get such an explicit response. And this was one of those unusual situations where immediately the person who was helped by Imam Zaman was actually made aware of who his true identity was. But in many instances, it's not quite so obviously clear to people. An example of that would be Sheikh Murtaza Ansari. So the death of Ayatollah al-Uzma Hajj Sheikh Muhammad Hassan Najafi was a situation where many people after him proclaimed that Sheikh Murtaza Ansari should become the next Marja'i Taqlid. But he refused on the basis that Sayyid al-Ulama Mazandarani was still alive and was a much more qualified candidate than he was, even though other people kept urging him to take on this role. He stated he would only take the role when Imam Mahdi alayhi salam would grant him permission to do so. Later on, when he was amongst his own students, a noble stranger came asking him a fiqh question that had not previously been addressed before. Based on his own studies and judgment, Shaykh Ansari was able to answer the question appropriately, and this noble stranger proclaimed 3 times, "You are a mujtahid," and then proceeded to leave. Shaykh Ansari realized that this noble stranger was in fact Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, and he had been endorsed by him to serve as the rightful mujtahid to be followed by others. And lastly, the example that I wanted to discuss with you all was that of Allameh Hilli. Allameh Hilli had a contemporary Sunni scholar who had written a book refuting Shia beliefs. So Allameh Hilli decided to pretend to be a follower of this Sunni scholar in order to gain access to this book so that he can copy it and later on write his own refutation of what the book had been written about. So one day he finally convinces the Sunni scholar to trust him with this book, and he's able to borrow it from him for one night. So as he's copying the book, it gets close to midnight, he's getting very tired, and all of a sudden this stranger appears to him, this dignified-looking man. They start talking a bit, and then the stranger sees how tired Allameh Hilli is becoming and says to him, "I'll copy the rest of the book while you rest." Allameh Hilli innately trusts this person and proceeds to go to sleep. When he wakes up in the morning, he sees that that stranger is no longer around, but the book has been fully copied and the bottom has been signed. "The proof of Allah wrote this." So in many people's encounters with Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, they're not instantly aware of who he actually is, but they have this innate trust towards this person. But these are all examples that you can see that in our hours of need, he is available to us to help us, even though we may not actually realize it. Thank you for your time. Salawat.